Hello everyone, I'm Morali and welcome back to the channel. So this video was originally supposed to be a lore mystery bits episode, but then once I started doing research into the subject, it actually ended up being a lot longer than just like 1 to 2 minutes. So I didn't want to just squeeze in all this information in 2 minutes and maybe leave something important out, and I kind of actually wanted to theorize a little bit. Now, in some of the theory videos that I've made, we've talked about the Jade Sea a lot. One area and factions that we haven't talked about is the Echovald Forest. The Echovald Forest is pretty much the other side of the Jade Sea. They're like the opposing, the Luxons live on the Jade Sea and the Kurzicks live in the Echovald Forest. So they're the two opposing places in Cantha, and we have talked about duality before. So since I've made some theories about the creatures of the Jade Sea and things like that, I wanted to do the same thing for the Echovald Forest. And before I get into it, I want to say that this was inspired by a comment left by Ventari, and if I'm saying that wrong, I'm sorry. But they talked about the Wardens, and once I started doing research into the Wardens and Urgoz, I started realizing that there's a lot more to talk about, I feel like, and there's actually some possible connections to Guild Wars 2 or something that ArenaNet could use to maybe tie in the lore a little bit together, and I kind of wanted to theorize on that. So let's get into it. Who is Urgoz and who are the Wardens? So Urgoz is the forest spirit of the Echovald Forest, and originally Urgoz and his Wardens worked with the Kurzick people to protect the forest. Once the Jade Wind happened, people say that the Wardens became corrupted, and I say became corrupted because I'll get into that a little bit later on, but the Wardens became really aggressive and started attacking everyone around them, and that's pretty much the state of the Wardens and Urgoz as we go into factions. Now in factions, at the end of it, there's an elite mission where you go and you fight Urgoz. Urgoz himself does take a physical form. It says that when he manifests, he takes a tree form, which is made up of vines, and it looks kind of creepy, but it's really cool. And he also, when you look at the dialogue of Urgoz, he talks about foreseeing the future, or foreseeing that these heroes come, and he actually talks about how he foresees their destiny is to die there. And it's really interesting that he seems to have the power to foresee the future, or at least the possibility of it. So I want you guys to keep that in mind. That already kind of is probably going to ring some bells for you guys. And I also want to talk about the Wardens. So the Wardens are like tree-like people, and it says that they maybe originally the Wardens might have been humans at some point, or some kind of holy men that have now merged with the spirits that they were defending or fighting for or whatever. Now all of this is really interesting because there's a lot of similarities to something in Guild Wars 2. Let's talk about the Sylvari. So the Sylvari are tree people, right? And their forms are based off of the seeds having been planted on top of the grave of humans, and that's how they take their form, and they're kind of shaped by Ventari's tablet, right? And we also have the avatar of the pale tree, which kind of tries to protect her children from the bad things in the dream, from Mordremoth and from all those things, and she uses pretty much Ventari's tablet to kind of keep her part of the dream safe from Mordremoth's like evil nightmare kind of thing. So this is really interesting because she also has the ability to kind of foresee the future, because in the personal story we go to her to ask for help with Traherne, and she actually shows us a vision of us going to Or, but the vision doesn't 100% come true. She seems to just kind of see a variation of the future, because in that same instance we see that Traherne is having a speech in Or talking to the three orders. Now that doesn't exactly happen. There's a similar speech that happens in Fort Trinity, and he also doesn't join us in getting to the gates of Ara. That's a meta event that happens in the map, and he isn't there to help us fight the priest that we have to fight at the end there. So she seems to have kind of the ability to foresee the future, but it's not 100%. So that's already like one similarity you have there. And then of course the Wardens kind of seem like the Sylvari in the sense of that they are these children of Urgoz. I mean, they're like tree people, right? And they are very similar to how the Sylvari are. So there's a lot of different similarities on top of Urgoz taking the form of an avatar, and that again is also very similar to how the avatar of the pale tree tree, like she has her own little avatar, and that's very similar. In a lot of different ways, those are very similar. So let's get into the theorizing part about what they could really be. So since we've already drawn the similarities and we talked about this, and I think a lot of the similarities are very obvious, we can kind of theorize on this stuff. So maybe Urgoz was a champion of Mordremoth from the prior rising of the Elder Dragons from 10,000 years ago. And my thought is that he was a champion who was left there by Mordremoth, and then Mordremoth maybe left to go to Tyria, where seemingly most of the Elder Dragons have kind of congregated and then fell asleep from the last rising of the Elder Dragons. So it seems to me that Urgoz was kind of left behind there, and maybe even because he's so far away from Mordremoth and Mordremoth fell asleep, he kind of has lost connection to the mind of Mordremoth, to the nightmare that is Mordremoth. And I say that because we talk about the Jade Wind, which in my original theory, in one of the theory videos that I had, I talked about how I think the Jade Wind has something to do with the Deep Sea Dragon. Now that is dragon magic, obviously. So what if the Echovald Forest was hit with the Jade Wind and got transformed into stone, and that made Urgoz realize that, oh hey, that is dragon magic. The dragons maybe are awakening again, or maybe even his connection to Mordremoth's mind was kind of like reestablished in a weird sense, where like the dragon magic kind of jump started it or something, and that all of a sudden made him realize that he's a dragon champion. And that's when he started attacking all the people, because he realized he's not friendly with the Kurzick, and that his original job is to maybe corrupt everyone and consume magic. You know, that's the whole purpose of the dragons, is they want to consume magic. So I think that's kind of where the theory goes. I don't know how much further you can take that theory, but I do think that ArenaNet has a chance to kind of give some more lore to Urgoz and the Wardens without really destroying what we had in Guild Wars 1. This would tie in really well with the dragon story and maybe even the end of the dragons. We have seen other trees before. In the personal story, we find a Sylvari that's from a different tree, and his name is Malik. Originally, ArenaNet wanted to talk about Malik and his tree in Heart of Thorns, but apparently they ran out of time, or so they said, and they couldn't fit it in. Now, I think this would be really interesting to have maybe that story, maybe not Malik specifically, but maybe another tree, because there's nothing that says that there can only be one tree, and like I said, Malik is from a different tree that we never see, and when the pale tree was planted, they talked about that there was multiple seeds. So there's definitely a chance of other trees existing in the world, and it would be really cool to maybe bring back some kind of Mordremoth story, and they could even bring back the Wardens in some way where they kind of tie in with the dragons. And it's now kind of like how the Unchained are when we go to Siren's Landing, where in Siren's Landing, the Risen are now the Unchained. They're still dragon minions, but they have lost their master. And so the Wardens could be exactly the same thing. And maybe there could be some kind of story about how the Sylvari will try to communicate with the Wardens, you know, them being like cousins in a weird way, and maybe try to get them on the side. And there could be like a side story to this, or there could be even something after End of Dragons that talks about these different things. So I kind of wanted to just bring that up. Let me know what you guys think down below. I think this theory in particular has some merit if ArenaNet tries to kind of tie in their lore together. We'll have to see, but let me know what you guys think, and I'll see you guys in the next episode. Bye guys.